think one time that it was probably just as much or as big a thrill playing with the two sons as any of the other achievements down through all those 25 years plus?
Yeah, it was. I listed right with #1 as far as thrills in hockey goes, and I think one of the reasons why is a simple fact that, you know, if you wish for something long enough, and many years had gone into the calendar since the time that I played a benefit game for the March of Dimes, and I joined the junior Red Wings along with Mark and Marty. My brother, Vern, played back in defense, and the youngest son, Murray, who's a medical doctor now, he's, or going to be, I should say, he was playing back there with Vern, so we had an all Howe outfit. And after that was over, and the kids were very young at the time, they said, can you hang on long enough to play with them? And I said, I'd love to do that, but there's 2 strikes against me. The draft age at the time, they had to play through the eligibility of juniors, which would be 20, through their 20th year, and also the chance of them both be drafted by one club was nil. So that I had given up on, and all of a sudden I got that opportunity. I think that's why, and everybody I know, any father, they like to do something to tie them in that much closer to the family, and it's fun when you go on a road trip, take half your family with you.
It must have been tough, though, for a guy who in Detroit was like the greatest athlete, a legend, as it were, and here are these 2 young boys coming along, going to pick up the stick and skates and try to do it the same thing. It had to be a very tough thing for them to be able to handle, I would imagine.
Yes and no. I think the toughest one was for Murray, because all of a sudden his 2 brothers made it, too, and he had to do what we've been talking about all our lives, tell him, hey, give yourself a choice and not a chance, and that is simple by means of give 100% of the books as well as hockey. Then when there comes a day to split, then you will choose the right direction. And so with Murray, it was a case of school being more to his liking than hockey. Just packed it in, and Mark loved the hockey from the day one. As a matter of fact, I think he's one of the few guys I never retaliated against. When he cut me on the nose for about 3 stitches when I'm sleeping prior to the game, he raps me with a stick. Marty, the older boy, his #1 was love was what's going on across the road, a football game, really. And that's why he just simply fell in love with football. And then up till a time when he ceased to grow after 6'2" and about 185 pounds, and all of a sudden everybody else had bulking up, and he's not going along that. And then he had kind of a sad experience too, and he took more of a liking to the game of hockey, which I'm happy for.
Well, Dad is playing this National Hockey League schedule and traveling by train, I guess, in those days all across the country. Who's getting these kids ice time and, you know, washing their shorts and whatever?
The only reason they're playing is Mother. Colleen is a very smart lady, a very pleasant lady, and we hit it off right out of bowling alley when we were very young. We got married, and then very soon after, she realized that there's a lot of mail to answer and a lot of public to answer to, so she helped me tremendous amount in my dealings, and she more or less took over the business, which was really nice because it freed my mind up to go on the road, and fully realizing that she was going to give those kids 100% opportunity. She not only did that, but she went overboard. She realized at the time when they were just starting to walk away with things in the Detroit area that maybe the Canadian competition would be better. So instead of moving them from home, what she did was she just canceled out of the regular program in Detroit.
Youth program,
and arranged for an 80-game schedule with Canadian competition. So they played more or less exhibition games for 80 games, and it was a marked improvement for about 17 kids. She's very proud of the fact that out of that group, I think there's 17 of them either made it to college or professional hockey.
So Mom kind of threw the best neighborhood kids in a bus, took them up to Canada and drove them all over the place playing hockey?
About 15, 20,000 miles a year. And she put in a ruling, I know when they become juniors, that no parent could ride on the bus for obvious reasons. And so a lot of times she was the only one freed up to do the trip, and she was general manager. So she'd ride from like Detroit to Welland, Ontario, drive behind the bus. And she liked it. It was something of her doing, and she did a tremendous job of it.
on your off playing. When you're playing all these years, were skills coming fairly naturally to you, or was hockey something that you really worked at more than the average Joe?
Well, I didn't realize I was working at it. Much to the surprise of a lot of people now, Mark at the age of 28 is still shooting the puck in his basement to improve his shot or at least keep it sharp. I did that all summer long. I played goal and forward and on the streets, and then what I didn't know is something that was taught me very early age. Jack Adams, after playing my first game, he's a tough old bird, and I scored a goal and assist. You got to really admire the man, because what he didn't want me to get out of line. He just simply sat me on the bench for 15 games. And he come over there and something happened. He said, "Did you see that?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Fine." He said, "That's what I want you to do. You can learn a lot of hockey sitting here." And it gave me kind of the little bit of a knowledge that, hey, you know, it's nice to be in the league. I'd rather play, but I'm still here. So I got in very, very few games that first year, and I think I scored, what, 7 goals. It wasn't exactly Wayne Gretzky, let's put it that way. But there, maybe in one game it was, but he was very, very solid man, and he kept us very much our feet on the ground. As soon as you got a little, kind of a big head at all, you sat the other period out. So he kept you very much in control, and I think the leverage they had then, because the salaries were such that you could afford to carry a few around. We had about 4 or 5 extra players that participated in practice, and if there's a letdown at all, they just slide in and take your place.
Well, what was the quality of the game for the most part in your career? You did a lot of train travel. There was much less teams, 5 or 6 teams. A rough life, or did you really love it?
I loved it. I think that the players nowadays are missing something, not going on the train, because there's a certain amount of closeness. We travel by train, say up to, on Friday, we'd go into Montreal, and about 6 of those hours would be day hours. Then we'd hit the sleeper, get up in the morning, and prepare for the game. And then after the game, we hit the sleeper again, but we'd sit in the parlors on either end, and great long discussions, 3 or 4 hours of what went right or wrong that game. And I think it was a head task at that time, trying to iron out some of the problems of the past and bring them into focus. And I think what happens now is that if somebody finishes, you got a 15-minute ride to the airplane, and then you're singled out to a seat. And I don't think you have that advantage we did of discussing that game totally. So I think that we had a lot going for us in those days, and I also believe that we had more of a roommate than what they have now, because take the Flyers, they can almost bus into about 4 cities and get the job done. Where we played one another 14 times before playoffs, and there was a certain amount of animosity. You knew what to expect.
I was going to ask you that. Was it animosity, or was it an advantage or a disadvantage to, with 5 other opponents in the league, you were playing the same guys as you said 14 times. Now it's, a handful of times.
If you had size, it was an advantage. No, and yeah, you'd go, somebody get you, and it might have been a game or 2 before, and you're just waiting for the opportunity to have him with his head down and then do what he did to you. It's... I almost do believe now the poor guys, when sometimes you go out in a period, sometimes it's hard to get up because they don't know exactly who they're against. And if they remember the last time, I can't imagine say if a Gretzky got 4 or 5 goals against a club, and the next time he meets him, he's going to expect a certain amount, and then he's going to find out that he worked for him last time. This time he's not working for him. He has to get on work, and I think that's what's lacking a lot of times in the first period. They go out there, and that's why those quick goals are coming about, because somebody is not ready for what's going to come about.
Maybe there's a message there that you accomplished your phenomenal numbers against more difficult times than. I mean, these guys playing against you, as you said, 14 times, they knew how to stop you, or thought they did, but they just couldn't get it done.
I knew what I was going to do, and I fooled them with the blink great. But yeah, I think there's quite a bit, because. And then you gain a certain amount of confidence. If I've beaten you before, I'll do it again. There's no doubt in my mind. So that guy has to get in the back of his mind too, that I'm not going to do it. But as it so happened, during those days too, we played against two teams that were having a rough time. They're like Boston and Chicago. It sounds funny now, and even New York were having a rough time. And we licked our lips when we played half our games because we knew we were going to get goals. And it's a confidence build up. And sometimes I honestly do believe in some given nights they're a better hockey club and we're still winning because we had that kind of thinking going for us. And but nowadays you walk on, and I played probably the second last year I played. We were on the road trip for 7 games, and I played against one guy 3 times in 3 different cities with the trading. I think the trading is. Has really gotten to a snowball now to the point where some of the guys must feel like they should buy a mobile home because they're here, there, and everywhere else, and it's uncomfortable for he and his family because like somebody comes in, they like to get a long-term contract so they can get totally involved with the community and feel like they're part of it. I know Philadelphia players must feel that way, and it must be a great credit to the city. So many guys, you talk about some guys, oh, they're in Philadelphia. What they do after their career, they're in Philadelphia, and there's quite a few of the guys that are living right in the area.
Well, you're watching your sons now. Will you approach them and talk hockey to them? You mentioned these great conversations on the trains or whatever, and the kids not benefiting from that. But suppose you see something tonight. Will you make the first step, or will you kind of stay in the back and wait for them to come to you?
Well, I've already said it because I watched Mark a couple of nights ago, and he was in great position, but he's so unselfish. He passed it over, and as a result was the puck bounced on by his wingmate, and didn't get a shot on net. So I just think don't be totally, that way. I said, sometimes be a little selfish, especially when you're in a better position, and go by the own rules that Lindsay and Abel and myself, we had a rule, who's ever in the best position gets the puck. And Mark at that particular time was dead on front. He had everything going for him. He was going directly at the net. He had the puck on the stick. All he had to do is shoot it. So there's a little advice, shoot that dumb thing. It won't go in. With 90% of those that aren't shot do not go in, so it's a known fact. But he is, and yet it's a quality which makes him a team player, is the fact that he'll give up that. And I've saw it this year a couple times when the Quebec young Hunter, wide open net, the goaltender had been pulled out and he came down, get within about 10 feet of the net, stopped, and Paymont was trailing by a few feet. He just put it over to him and let him put it in the net. He gets an assist, and a lot of guys won't do that. They don't.
You mentioned a name a couple of times, Wayne Gretzky. Do you watch him now and say, there's the one guy that maybe can break Gordie Howe's records, my records?
I know he's going to break it. All he has to do is stay healthy for a couple of years.
How do you feel about that?
Good. I known the guy since he was 12, and I say if it had to be somebody, I couldn't have picked a better boy. It's just because I feel proud of the fact that in yesteryears there's a great man by the name of Rocket Richard who made a target for myself to follow, and I caught that and went beyond it, and then I made the target. Now Wayne's after it. I cannot foresee him on mine unless they double a schedule to 200 games or something that anybody's going to catch the kid. It's phenomenal, and Mark and I were watching films on him. Every time the kid shoots a puck, the goaltender, like the Rocket used to, every time he shot the puck, there had to be a save or it was a goal. And he's so beautifully accurate. It's, sometimes you wonder, how did that go in, when between the goaltender's legs or this, but that's where he's aimed.
Well, maybe we can have one more record. Maybe Mark and Marty will produce a son who wants to play in this league, and the grandfather can suit up again and play a few more games.
Well, we have that. We have skated with the young fellow. As a matter of fact, we heard by way of Mark and Ginger that Travis was indeed going to have a practice in the Philadelphia area, and we're in Hartford. When was this going to be? It was 4 o'clock that evening. Fine, we'll be there. We drove all the way down. It's about 4.5-hour drive. Put my skates on, skated for an hour with them. We had a bite to eat, and then we drove home. I wanted that, that first. I want to be with the little guy because he wears the Philadelphia flag with his dad number and Howe on the back, and he wears that around with great pride. And that is the building of future hockey players. And as a matter of fact, I was with a bunch of the Vancouver boys, and with about 500 guys in the league and young kids now. Especially with the helmets, it's hard to really recognize them off the ice. So I just talked to them as a group, and young Travis was with me at the time, and And he looked, and Tiger Williams gave him a Vancouver puck.
Well, listen, we appreciate you coming back, and
thank
great
you.
seeing you again.
Someday, someone will top the seemingly insurmountable achievements of Gordie Howe. And perhaps, as Gordie suggests, it will be Wayne Gretzky. But the legend of Gordie Howe, that will remain forever.